The question is a simple one. It's the kind of question a parent asks, a friend asks, a detective asks. Did Lauren Spierer leave the bar with a stranger? It feels like it should have a simple answer, or a yes or a no. But with Lauren's story, nothing is simple. The truth is, the answer is no. She did not leave the bar with a stranger, and that fact is perhaps the most haunting part of this entire story. The people she was with were not strangers. They were her friends, they were part of her circle, and their silence in the years since she vanished is a mystery all its own. To understand what happened, you have to go back to the beginning of that night. It was June 3rd, 2011. It was a summer night in Bloomington, Indiana, a college town. Lauren was a student at Indiana University. She was 20 years old. She was bright, stylish, and full of life. She had just finished her sophomore year. She was from New York, a long way from the quiet Midwest. But she had found a life here. She had a boyfriend, Jesse Wolfe. She had friends. That night started like many nights for college students. It was about fun. It was about blowing off steam. Lauren was with a friend, David Rohn. They went to her apartment first. They had a few drinks and they met up with another group of friends. Among them was a young man named Corey Rossman. This group of friends headed to a party. They stayed for a bit, then decided to go to a bar. The bar was Kilroy's Sports Bar. It's a popular spot in Bloomington. It's loud and crowded. It's a place to see people and be seen. Lauren and her friends got there around 1:45 a.m. The night was already well underway. Inside, they drank. Lauren was seen on security cameras. She was drinking water, but also shots. People who were there said she seemed intoxicated. It's more than just a little drunk. She seemed unsteady. She seemed vulnerable. This is where the first critical moment happens. Around 2:30 a.m., Lauren decided to leave Kilroy's. But she left two very important things behind, her cell phone and her shoes. A 20-year-old woman in this day and age does not leave her phone behind willingly. And she doesn't leave a bar barefoot. It speaks to her state of mind. She wasn't thinking clearly. She was impaired, and she wasn't alone. When she walked out of Kilroy's, Corey Rossman was with her. Corey Rossman was not a stranger. He was a friend. They knew each other. They were part of the same social scene. Security cameras from a nearby business captured them walking together. Lauren is clearly unsteady on her feet. Corey is holding her up, helping her walk. They are headed in the direction of her apartment building, Smallwood Plaza. This is where the story should have ended. A friend, seeing she was drunk, walks her home. He makes sure she gets to her door safely. She goes inside, sleeps it off, and wakes up the next day with a headache and maybe some embarrassment. But that's not what happened. They got to her apartment building, there was an altercation. Another group of young men were on the 5th floor, and words were exchanged. Things escalated. Corey Rossman ended up getting punched in the face. He was hit hard. Hard enough that he later said he couldn't remember anything after that point. He was disoriented. He was also intoxicated. In the middle of this chaos, Lauren was there. It's barefoot, without her phone, and with a friend who had just been assaulted. Why didn't she go into her apartment? It was right there. Her key was in her pocket. She could have been safe inside her own room in a matter of seconds. No one knows the answer to that question. It's one of the first and biggest holes in the timeline. For some reason, instead of going to her own home, she and Corey Rossman left her apartment building. They walked away from safety. They went to his apartment. It was a few blocks away. Why his apartment? Why not hers? Again, no one has a clear answer. Corey Rossman claims he doesn't remember. When they got to his building, his roommate, Mike Beth, was there. Mike Beth saw them come in. He said Lauren was stumbling. He said Corey was a mess from the fight. He said Corey was trying to get Lauren to go to sleep on his couch, but she wanted to go back to her own place. According to Mike Beth, Lauren was asking for her phone. She wanted to call someone. He said she tried to use his phone to call people, but he didn't know who she was trying to reach. Then, he said Corey Rossman tried to carry Lauren back to her apartment. He described Corey putting her over his shoulder like a firefighter's carry. But they didn't get far. They ended up at another apartment in the same complex. This apartment belonged to Jay Rosenbaum. Jay Rosenbaum was not a stranger either. He was another acquaintance from their social circle. He was known to deal drugs, which may or may not be relevant. What is relevant is that he was the next person to see Lauren, and he would become the last person known to see her alive. According to Jay Rosenbaum, Corey Rossman brought Lauren to his apartment. He said Corey was drunk and belligerent. He said he put Corey to bed in his own room. Then he said he dealt with Lauren. He claims she had a large black bruise under her eye. No one else had reported seeing this bruise. Not the security cameras at the bar, not the people who saw her at her own apartment building. Rosenbaum said Lauren wanted to go home. He said he tried to get her to stay, to sleep on his couch. He said he called a few friends to see if they knew where her apartment was, but no one answered. Then comes the final chilling piece of the timeline. Around 4:30 a.m., Jay Rosenbaum says he watched from his balcony as Lauren Spierer walked away from his apartment building. She was alone. She was still barefoot. She had no phone. She turned a corner at 11th Street and College Avenue, and she was gone. That was it. That was the last confirmed sighting. A 20-year-old woman, heavily intoxicated, alone and barefoot in the pre-dawn hours of a college town. She walked around a corner and vanished from the face of the earth. So, to go back to the question, did she leave the bar with a stranger? No. She left with Corey Rossman, a friend. She then went to Corey's apartment, where his roommate Mike Beth, another acquaintance, was present. From there, she ended up in Jay Rosenbaum's apartment, another person she knew. She was surrounded by people from her world all night, but not one of them made sure she got home safe. Not one of them could provide a clear, coherent story of what happened in those final hours. When Lauren didn't answer her phone the next day, her boyfriend Jesse Wolf got worried. He had been texting her, he called her, nothing. He reported her missing that afternoon. The search began almost immediately. Her parents, Charlene and Robert Spierer, flew in from New York. They were plunged into every parent's worst nightmare. Their daughter was gone. The investigation ramped up quickly. Bloomington Police, Indiana State Police, and even the FBI got involved. There were volunteers from all over the country came to help search. They scoured woods, fields, and waterways. They put up flyers with Lauren's smiling face on every corner. Her parents gave heart-wrenching press conferences, begging for any information, any clue that could lead them to their daughter. They pleaded with the young men who were with her that night to tell them everything they knew. And that's where the wall of silence went up. The men she was with that night, Corey Rossman, Mike Beth, and Jay Rosenbaum, all hired lawyers. They stopped talking to the police. They submitted to initial interviews, but follow-ups were refused. They refused to take polygraph tests administered by the police. Their stories were filled with inconsistencies and memory lapses, which they attributed to their own intoxication. To the Spierer family and to the public, this was infuriating. These weren't strangers. These were the people who were with her. They were the last links in the chain. If anyone knew what happened to Lauren, it was them. Their refusal to cooperate fully fueled speculation. It made them look guilty. It made it seem like they had something to hide. The police publicly named them persons of interest. That's not the same as a suspect. It just means they believe these individuals have information crucial to the case. But without more evidence, without a body, without a crime scene, there was nothing they could do. They couldn't force them to talk. This is what makes the case so agonizing. The mystery seems like it's right there, just out of reach. It feels like the answer lies within the memories, however clouded, of three young men. Over the years, theories have swirled. The first and most persistent theory is that something happened to Lauren while she was in the company of one or more of those men, and they panicked. The most common version of this theory is that she suffered a medical emergency, possibly an accidental overdose. Maybe she took something, or was given something, that had a fatal reaction. Faced with a dead or dying young woman in their apartment, the young men, scared of the consequences, made a terrible decision. Instead of calling 911, they decided to hide her body to protect themselves. This theory would explain a lot. It would explain their immediate silence. It would explain their need for lawyers. It would explain the lack of a public crime scene. If Lauren died in an apartment, the only crime scene would have been the apartment itself and wherever they might have taken her. The story of her walking away at 4:30 a.m. could have been a fabrication, a cover story to give them an alibi and to point the investigation away from them. Jay Rosenbaum's claim that she had a black eye could have been a detail added to suggest she fell or was assaulted by someone else after she left his place. The Spierer family has publicly stated they believe this is what happened. They have begged the men or anyone who knows what they did to just tell them where Lauren is. They have said they could find it in their hearts to forgive an accident, a panic. What they can't forgive is the not knowing, the silence, the cruelty of leaving them in this limbo for years. Then there is the abduction theory. This theory suggests that Jay Rosenbaum's story is true, that Lauren did walk away from his apartment at 4:30 a.m. alone and vulnerable. In this scenario, she was a target for a predator. The streets of Bloomington are generally safe, but at that hour, anything is possible. Someone could have been cruising the streets looking for an opportunity. They would have seen a young woman barefoot, clearly intoxicated, an easy victim. This theory has had a few potential leads over the years. There were reports of a white truck seen in the area around that time. Investigators followed up on this, but it never led anywhere concrete. The area where Lauren disappeared is not far from Lake Monroe, a large body of water. Searches of the lake have been conducted, but nothing has ever been found. A few years after Lauren vanished, this theory gained some traction because of another case. In 2015, another Indiana University student, Hannah Wilson, went missing after a night out. Her body was found a day later. A man named Daniel Messel was arrested and convicted of her murder. The similarities were chilling. Both were IU students. Both disappeared after a night of drinking. Investigators looked hard at Messel for any connection to Lauren's case. His cell phone records were checked. His alibi for the night Lauren went missing was scrutinized, but ultimately no link could ever be established. It seemed to be a tragic but separate case. The abduction theory remains a possibility, but it lacks any solid evidence. It is a ghost, a what if that haunts the periphery of the case. And then there are the other, smaller leads that have popped up over the decades since she's been gone. The tips have come in from all over the country, people claiming to have seen her, the prison inmates claiming to have information, psychics offering their visions. The police have had to chase down every single one, no matter how outlandish. They've excavated properties based on tips, they've interviewed convicted felons, they've followed every thread, and every single one has been a dead end. Through it all, the young men have remained silent. Their lives have moved on. They graduated from college, they got jobs, they moved to different cities. They have tried to put Bloomington and the ghost of Lauren Spierer behind them, but they can't. Their names will forever be linked to her disappearance. Online, they are judged and condemned by an army of internet sleuths. In the court of public opinion, they were found guilty a long time ago, but the law is different. The law requires evidence, and in this case, there is precious little of it. There is a timeline with huge gaps. There are witness statements clouded by alcohol and fear. There is a group of young men who are uncooperative, but there is no body. There is no DNA evidence linking them to a crime. There is nothing but suspicion. And suspicion is not enough to make an arrest. The role of the parents, Charlene and Robert, has been central to keeping this case alive. They have been relentless. They have refused to let their daughter be forgotten. They run a Facebook page, Official Find Lauren Spierer, where they provide updates and share memories of their daughter. They have given countless interviews. They have hired private investigators. They have filed a civil lawsuit against Corey Rossman, Mike Beth, and Jay Rosenbaum, accusing them of negligence. The lawsuit was ultimately dismissed as the judge ruled they had no legal duty to care for Lauren, but it was another attempt to force them to speak, to get them to answer questions under oath. It didn't work. Charlene Spierer's posts are a masterclass in quiet, determined grief. She speaks directly to the people who were with Lauren. She asks them to imagine if it was their daughter, their sister. She asks them to find a shred of compassion in their hearts. She asks them to break their pact of silence. She marks Lauren's birthday every year. She marks the anniversary of her disappearance every year. She never stops. Her pain is a constant public reminder of the human cost of this mystery. So, the question remains, if Lauren didn't leave with a stranger, what happened? The people she was with were known to her. In a way that makes it worse. A stranger is a monster from the shadows, an unknown fear. But when the people who might hold the answers are the ones who are supposed to be your friends, the betrayal is deeper. The story becomes a cautionary tale about personal responsibility, about looking out for one another, about the devastating consequences of a single night of bad decisions. It's possible the young men truly don't know what happened. It's possible Corey Rossman's memory really was wiped out by the punch and the alcohol. It's possible Jay Rosenbaum is telling the absolute truth, and Lauren really did just walk off into the night, a victim of a random, terrible crime. It's possible, but the odds feel long. The collective amnesia, the immediate hiring of lawyers, the decade of silence, it all points to something more. It points to a shared secret. The investigation is officially still open. It is a cold case, but not a closed one. The police in Bloomington say they still get tips. They still follow up on leads. They are waiting for that one break. The one person who decides their conscience can't take it anymore. The one person who was on the periphery, who heard something, who saw something. The one person who finally decides that the Spierer family's pain outweighs their own fear of getting in trouble. Until that day comes, the story is stuck. It's frozen in time at 4:30 a.m. on June 3rd, 2011. A young woman, full of promise, turns a corner and is never seen again. The simple question of whether she left the bar with a stranger has an answer. No. The far more complex and important question is what happened after she left the bar with her friends. And the answer to that is locked away, hidden behind a wall of silence that so far has been unbreakable. The search for Lauren Spierer is no longer just a search for a missing person. It's a search for the truth. And for her family, it's a search for a peace they will never have until they can finally bring their daughter home.